Screw the rules. No, this isn't just a dumb reference to Little Karibo. This phrase is actually a very integral part of Fairy Tail as a whole. Fairy Tail is a very popular anime that is pretty infamous for its cliche message of power of friendship, or its frankly really bad fan service. But one of the most popular reasons for people to hate on Fairy Tail is its terrible, wonky power scaling. Honestly, I don't get why this is such a major gripe that people have with the show, since power scaling is a pretty stupid thing to criticize about a shonen anime. But what if I told you that one of the reasons Fairy Tail is actually incredible is because of this ridiculous power scaling? All you have to do is understand this attitude that is very prevalent within the show. Every time a guild member accomplishes something within the show, whether it's overcoming an insanely broken antagonistic force or performing some insane feat like, I don't know, shattering a huge-ass meteor with a bunch of broken bones, this idea is reinforced. No matter the rules of any given situation, Fairy Tail will find a way to break them. Even if the law is set in stone, the guild couldn't possibly care less about it. Like when we see the guild master burn up the papers given to him by the Magic Council. It's one of the first things we see in the show. I mean, this is pretty obvious. I don't understand what people... All you really need to do is take a look at all of the Fairy Tail interactions with the villains of the series. These people who in every dimension should be 10 times stronger than the heroes, who should have the upper hand in battle, but always lose. When we look at someone like Master Hades, Fairy Tail's second master, someone who's supposedly even stronger than Makarov himself, he was completely destroying the main characters until Loxus showed up and gave Natsu the power to use lightning. This makes no sense at all. Natsu should not be able to eat lightning, and he should not be able to get lightning powers from it. Even for the show standards, Natsu was never able to eat Loxus's lightning before, so he shouldn't be able to now. But what happens? Natsu eats the lightning anyway, gains access to a new form because of it, and then proceeds to kick Hades' ass with it. Rules only exist in Fairy Tail in order to be broken. In the final arc, they go up against an immortal with immense magical power, and they find a way to kill him anyway. One of the reasons why the Grand Magic Games is the best arc in Fairy Tail is because this beautiful attitude gets to shine throughout the entire thing. Moments like Natsu taking down the Twin Dragons, Urza taking on a castle full of 100 monsters, Loxus demolishing the entire Raventail Guild, Jalal joining the competition just because, I could go on and on. But the greatest scene in that entire arc, and one of the greatest scenes in Fairy Tail in general, was the climax of that arc. When Sting was the last Sabretooth member standing, he was completely uninjured and remained hidden throughout the entire Battle Royale. All of the members of Fairy Tail's team were still in the game, but they were badly injured. The entire time, you're left wondering how Fairy Tail is going to win against Sting in their condition, and the most unexpected thing happens. Sting surrenders the match. Before the game, he was so confident that he would win with this strategy, but when he was standing face to face with the members of Fairy Tail, he saw their determination, their legendary stature, and all he could feel in that moment was fear. Even though they were battered and bruised to the point where Sting could probably blow on them and they would fall over, Sting realized that they were on a whole other level from him, and the only thing he could do was admit defeat. Just the name Fairy Tail has immense power and weight, and everyone else in Fiore recognizes that. When Natsu stormed the Sabretooth Guild Hall and took on the master of their guild, all of the members of Sabretooth were in shock that this person from the weakest guild in Fiore at the time, only by name, was going toe-to-toe with the most powerful wizard in their guild. And keep in mind that Sabretooth was the top guild in Fiore for 7 whole years. They thought that they were the shit, but those 7 years of grandeur were instantly ruined by one thing that Natsu did. The sheer influence and intimidation of the name Fairy Tail is honestly kind of scary. So scary, in fact, that when Urza was fighting against people brought back from the dead, all she had to do was look at them and tell them to get lost. And these people, who were already dead by the way, were scared shitless. And I don't blame them. Have you seen the kind of shit Urza's been able to do? Have you seen what any of the top tier members of Fairy Tail can do? They destroy everything in the vicinity purely on accident. One of the most infamous traits of Fairy Tail as a guild is that they tend to break, well, everything. This is something that they're constantly criticized for within the show, and they've gotten into trouble because of it so many times. They destroy things so often that the Magic Council considered them to be a nuisance and wanted to shut their guild down. And I don't blame them. I mean, they must have a shit ton of debt just from doing their job. But they never saw this as something that they needed to fix, for better or for worse. So one of the greatest screw the rules moments in the show was when Natsu turned the seemingly terrible quirk of theirs into an advantage. When he was fighting Jalal in the Tower of Heaven, Jalal lets it slip that if the tower takes too much damage, then he won't be able to carry out his plans, a mistake he will soon regret making. After hearing this, and without skipping a beat, Natsu reacts by saying,
"So now that the tower's a giant crystal, I guess shattering it would screw up your plans. This is not your day, buddy! Ah!
What are you doing?
Come on, didn't you know that destroying stuff is what us Fairy Tail wizards are best at?"
Instead of taking shame in their destructive nature, the members of Fairy Tail see it as another advantage of theirs. Natsu takes pride in his ability to break shit, and because of it, he's able to piss off Jalal and hold his own for a while until another beautiful example of screwing the rules, when Natsu eats the Ether Nano to overpower Jalal. A seemingly stupid power scaling moment that is actually pretty cool and thematically relevant to the screw the rules attitude, an attitude that carries all the way until the final season. Speaking of, the final season has gotten a lot of hate for some reason, even among the fans of Fairy Tail, but I personally love the final season because everything in the story was building up to this final arc, and the screwing of the rules is very strong. One of the greatest parts of the arc, in my opinion, was when Natsu and Gray got into a little fight, just a little one. Something about Natsu being END and also kind of responsible for Gray's whole family dying. I don't know, something along those lines. I don't like this part because of the fight itself, but because of how it's resolved. Urza knocking sense into Natsu and Gray will be one of my favorite moments in all of fiction, because of how powerful the message behind it is. Natsu being END, the ultimate demon of the Book of Zeref, is something that they built up for pretty much the entire anime, and Gray's inevitable beef with Natsu for being END was built up since the Tartaros arc. This conflict is something that the show was hyping up to be a really big deal, and make no mistake, it was a pretty big deal until they both saw Urza cry. In that moment, both Natsu and Gray realized that whatever they were going crazy about did not matter. All that mattered to them was how they had hurt Urza and how they had hurt a beloved family member. And after that moment, they were able to reconcile, and it was beautiful. But for Gray to realize that Natsu was his friend before he was END was a really great defining moment, one that defies all expectations and laws within the show. We all expected Gray to think of Natsu as a complete monster, but instead, Gray said, "Screw the rules, Natsu is my friend, and my duty as a member of the guild is to protect him." That's what he thinks about the whole situation. He even goes too far in the other direction, threatening to sacrifice himself against Zeref. Before Gray is able to cast Ice Shell, Natsu stops him and instead decides to fight Zeref himself, where he comes face to face with his older brother. Now keep in mind that Natsu is fully aware of Zeref's past, and yet, during the battle, he doesn't seem to show any sympathy for the Black Wizard at all. And that's because he doesn't. In his eyes, Zeref's sad backstory is just an excuse for him to remain trapped in the past, refusing to move forward. Natsu thinks that Zeref already has the ability to be happy, the same way that everybody in the world has the ability to be happy, because happiness is something you create. And at the end of his clash with Zeref, Natsu channels the strength of his guild into power in order to go against all of Zeref's sorrow, his anger and misery, all of his negative emotions. And what does Natsu do? He burns up all of that magical power with his flames and socks Zeref directly in the face. In this single punch, Natsu shows that he doesn't give a crap about the pain Zeref went through. He doesn't care that he thinks that the world rejects him no matter what he does, because in the end, it's up to you to make things work out. And that's what Fairy Tail does in every single arc. Like in Edalus, when it was revealed that the main characters needed the key to the canon as much as the villains did. If you watch Fairy Tail, it makes sense. And instead of backing down, Gray completely doubles down and destroys the key, leaving the opposing side in shambles. But Gray didn't regret making that decision. Instead, he talks about why he's not just an ice boy, he's an ice make wizard, and he makes an exact replica of the key made out of ice right in front of the guy who told him that he needed the key. Screw the rules. Or the time when Natsu couldn't eat Zenkro's flames because Natsu is a dragon slayer, so he can't eat the flames of a god slayer, so instead of giving up, Natsu empties his entire reserve of magic, and because he doesn't have any more, he's able to devour Zenkro's flames. Screw the rules! Or the time when Phantom Lord was about to destroy the Guildhall with the super duper Jupiter cannon, and instead of letting that happen, Urza tanked a hit from that huge ass magic gun. Screw the rules! Or the time when Lucy was the only one left to fight off Tartaros, so after summoning 3 celestial spirits, one after the other, she actually went and summoned the Celestial Spirit King to give Fairy Tail a fighting chance. Screw the rules! Or the time when one of the demons from the Tartaros Guild was guarding Face, and Wendy stood no chance against him until she breathed in the air with all the Ether Nano and achieved Dragon Force to absolutely whoop this abomination. Screw the rules. Or how about the time when Loxus was fighting a guy who was not only immune to electricity, but could be powered up by it, and instead of giving up, he was able to destroy this stupid robot by powering his lightning with his own blood. Screw the rules. Or how about, okay, I'm not gonna go any further, but you get the point. Fairy Tail doesn't give 2 shits about what's logical or what's even feasible. The reason why they can come out of several wars without so much as a scratch is simply because they said so. Because no matter how bad the situation, they'll be damned if everyone doesn't make it back to the Guildhall in one piece, safe and sound. That's why nobody in the guild has to die. That's why there are never any big lasting consequences to a lot of the guild's actions. Because our guild said screw the rules, this can only go down the way we want it to. A beautiful message for an even more beautiful guild.